Welcome back to Tales of Knights and Magic. Subscribe if you like, and now get comfortable and enjoy this glimpse into the world of fantasy. The bitter winds of early autumn swept through the low, rugged hills surrounding the humble village of Roldar, where Kalen had grown up amid the clangor of battle and the unending cycles of survival. Roldar was a modest settlement, its thatched roofs and weathered stone walls bearing witness to a people hardened by decades of unrest. For Kalen, life had been an endless succession of skirmishes and hardships, each day blurred into the next in a relentless grind of practice, loss, and the pursuit of honor. Though he was known throughout the region for his skill with a blade and his unwavering determination, his heart carried the scars of personal tragedies, misplaced loyalties, shattered promises, and the bitter taste of defeat that he had tasted too many times. That fateful day began no differently than countless others. The skies were overcast, an unpromising blanket that offered little comfort or solace as Kalen and his comrades set out towards the borderlands, where a band of marauding brigands had been terrorizing the trade routes. The company was small but fierce, a motley crew of seasoned fighters and hopeful recruits drawn from the meager population of Roldar. The rhythmic thrum of hooves and the steady clink of armor set a somber cadence to their march, a reminder that every journey in these turbulent lands was fraught with peril. As they advanced into a narrow valley carved by ancient rivers, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension, as if the very air held its breath, descended upon them. Kalen's eyes, ever watchful, scanned the tree-lined slopes and mist-shrouded clearings with habitual vigilance. He recalled the old legends whispered by the elders, tales of a forgotten power that lay dormant in the heart of the land, waiting for a soul deemed worthy to awaken it. He had dismissed such stories as superstition, relics of a bygone age of myth and legend, yet even he could not shake the uneasy feeling that there was more to the valley than met the eye. The ambush came without warning. Out of the dense cover of the forest, brigands clad in mismatched armor and brandishing crude weapons descended like vultures upon the unsuspecting patrol. In the chaos that ensued, the clash of steel rang out, echoing off the rocky walls of the valley. Kalen fought with desperate ferocity, his sword a blur of motion as he parried and struck in the frenzied ballet of combat. But as the battle unfolded with brutal intensity, fate intervened in a manner no mortal could have foreseen. In the midst of the melee, Kalen felt an unusual pull, a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration that seemed to resonate deep within his bones. His blade, slick with blood and sweat, hesitated for the briefest of moments, as if its usual certainty was challenged by an unseen force. Then, through the haze of combat and the cacophony of clashing metal, his gaze was drawn to a small object half buried in the earth at the edge of the field. It glowed faintly, an iridescent shimmer that stood in stark contrast to the grim darkness of the battle. There, nestled among the tangled roots of an ancient oak, lay a relic, a simple yet exquisitely crafted medallion, its surface etched with symbols that pulsed with a soft inner light. Something stirred inside Kalen as he beheld the artifact. For a brief, transcendent moment, the din of battle faded into a distant murmur, and all that remained was the compelling allure of that mysterious medallion. He felt as though his very soul was being beckoned by a force older than time, a call that resonated with the deepest parts of his being, as if it were speaking directly to the hidden potential lying dormant within him. With scarcely a thought for the tumult around him, Kalen's eyes locked onto the relic, and a surge of raw energy coursed through his veins like liquid fire. In that instant, the world snapped into a new focus. The swirling chaos of the battlefield gave way to a profound clarity, a moment of stillness amidst the storm of mortal strife. Unable to resist the enigmatic pull, Kalen broke away from the fray, dodging and weaving through the clamor of combat as if guided by destiny itself. His determination blazed like the fierce embers of a forgotten hearth, propelling him toward the source of the strange energy. Every step he took was weighted with the significance of a turning point, a divergence from the beaten path of his hard-fought life. He reached the relic, which seemed to pulse in time with his racing heart. Carefully, almost reverently, he knelt to pick it up, his calloused fingers closing around its smooth, cool metal. As soon as the medallion left the earth, a luminous wave radiated from it, enveloping Kalen in a soft, ethereal glow. The sensation was both overwhelming and inexplicably gentle, as though the relic were repairing something broken within him. His vision blurred, images flickered before his eyes, a cascade of memories not entirely his own. He saw flashes of a time when heroes and sorcerers stood side by side, when magic was a living, vibrant force that swirled in the winds and pulsed in the earth. He heard voices of ancient wisdom, urging him to rise and embrace a destiny that transcended mere mortal combat. The medallion's light seeped into every fiber of his being, and in that moment, Kalen felt a painful yet exhilarating metamorphosis. His arms, once steady and resolute only in the art of the sword, now trembled with an unfamiliar power, a raw, untamed magic that sparked at his fingertips. The very air around him seemed to vibrate with possibilities, as though reality was being remade in that singular transformative instant. Gone was the simple, brutal rhythm of combat. In its place there was a gentle hum of ancient energy, a cosmic symphony that spoke of untold secrets and uncharted futures. For a long moment, Kalen simply sat there, the medallion clutched tightly against his chest, as the newfound energy mingled with his senses. The sounds of clashing swords and desperate cries drifted to him on the winds, but they were now a distant backdrop to the profound internal awakening he experienced. The pain from cuts and bruises, the physical toll of battle, all seemed trivial in comparison to the overwhelming sense of potential that now coursed through him. In that silence, he understood that his life was about to change in ways he could scarcely imagine. Slowly, Kalen rose to his feet, his eyes reflecting an inner light that had been obscured for far too long. Though the battle around him still raged on, he no longer fought with the simple instinct of survival. Instead, every movement, every parry and thrust was imbued with a deliberate purpose, a fusion of swordplay and burgeoning magic. His blade, once a mere instrument of war, now shimmered with a subtle luminescence, as if each strike could slice through the very fabric of reality. The medallion hung from his neck, a constant reminder of the day his path diverged from the ordinary, and the weight of its magic spurred him onward. There was little time for reflection, for as he rejoined his comrades, he found that the dynamics of the battle had shifted. The brigands, sensing an inexplicable change in their adversary, became disoriented. Their crude, brutish tactics faltered before the fluid, almost otherworldly display of skill that Kalen now exhibited. He fought with a combination of graceful strikes and bursts of energy that not only repelled their onslaught, but also momentarily halted their momentum. The men around him, hardened as they were, exchanged looks of bewildered respect. Rumors of his awakening began to spread even amidst the chaos, and though few understood the true nature of the change, they sensed that something remarkable had occurred. In the aftermath of the skirmish, as dusk settled over the blood-stained valley, Kalen sought refuge in the quiet solitude of a ruined chapel set on a lonely hillside. The ancient sanctuary, long abandoned by its once devout occupants, now offered him a sanctuary for contemplation. Here, in the dim light filtered through fractured stained glass, he allowed himself the luxury of introspection, a rare respite from the constant tumult of battle and duty. He sat before an old altar, his gaze lingering on the fading remnants of murals that depicted heroic deeds and divine blessings, and he contemplated the mysterious medallion that hung heavily against his chest. In that silent communion with the past, Kalen began to understand that his awakening was no mere accident or fleeting surge of luck. It was rather the rekindling of an inner fire that had been waiting dormant for the right moment to ignite. The medallion was a beacon, a relic left behind by ancestors whose magic had once been woven into the very soil and sky of the land. Its symbols, mysterious and archaic, spoke of a lineage of warriors who transcended the limits of mere mortal strength to wield a power born of both resolve and sacrifice. Kalen's thoughts wandered to his long-cherished dreams, to restore honor to his family name, to forge a legacy that would be sung of in hushed tones in taverns and courts alike, and to become more than a simple swordsman, a master of both steel and sorcery. Each memory, each fleeting thought merged with the rhythmic pulse of the magic that now flowed within him. He recalled the faces of those he had lost, friends and comrades who had fallen in battles fought with unyielding determination, and he felt a bittersweet pang of regret mingled with an unyielding resolve. Their sacrifices, he realized, were not in vain. They were the sparks that had kindled the courage within him, enabling him to face the darkest nights with unwavering conviction. Over the following days, Kalen's journey took on a new dimension. He ventured beyond the immediate chaos of the battlefield, returning to his village where whispers of his transformation spread like wildfire. His arrival was met with a mixture of awe, suspicion, and quiet admiration. The villagers, rough and proud people, could see in his eyes a glimmer of something extraordinary, a light that was not merely born of the forge but of ancient magic rediscovered. Some hailed him as a chosen one, a herald of forgotten legends. Others murmured caution, wary of the unpredictable power that now surmounted his mortal frame. Yet for Kalen, the opinions of others were secondary to the truth that resonated within him, that he had been given a second chance, a chance to redefine his destiny. Guided by the subtle counsel of the medallion's glow, Kalen began to experiment with his newfound powers. In the privacy of the forest glens and over rugged hillsides, he practiced channeling the radiant magic that now pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. Sometimes the results were wild and uncontrolled, a burst of energy that shattered pebbles or sent small animals scattering in frightened leaps. Other times, with careful concentration and relentless determination, he managed to weave his magic seamlessly with his swordplay, creating devastatingly beautiful displays of energy that left observers speechless. Each small victory, each moment of failed control, contributed to the gradual shaping of a power that was uniquely his, a blend of the tangible art of combat and the ethereal, often unpredictable cadence of magic. At night, by the light of a modest campfire, Kalen would sometimes sit alone, letting his mind drift back to that fateful moment on the battlefield. He questioned the nature of the relic that had awakened him, who had forged it, and for what purpose. Had it been placed there by the gods, or was it a remnant of a forgotten age when magic flowed more freely, unburdened by mortal concerns? These musings, often accompanied by a heady mix of hope and melancholy, deepened his understanding of the delicate balance between power and responsibility. He knew that every gift demanded its due, and that every burst of magic could exact a toll on the spirit. Yet, in his determination to rise above his humble origins and become something greater, a symbol of true potential, he embraced the unknown, accepting both its beauty and its perils. In the days that followed, Kalen's exploits began to draw the attention of travelers and other wanderers. A wandering minstrel, his voice soft yet powerful, sang ballads of a mysterious swordsman with eyes that mirrored the ancient lore of the land. A weathered noble, stripped of title but rich in wisdom, sought an audience with him, hoping to share insights gleaned from dusty scrolls and whispered family legends. Even some of the local beggars, those who had long eked out an existence by the wayside, gathered to catch a glimpse of the man who had seemingly stepped out of myth. Yet, for all the attention and the newfound sense of purpose, Kalen remained introspective. In the quiet moments of solitude following each skirmish, or every lonely ride through the countryside, he felt the pull of destiny, the quiet urging to seek out the deeper mysteries of his power. There were hints, scattered like fragments of a shattered mirror, that the relic was but the beginning, that behind its gentle glow lay the remnants of an ancient magic lost to time, waiting for someone bold enough to reclaim it. He resolved to seek out the hermits and sages who might shed light on the relic's origin, those who once walked the line between mortal endeavor and the immortal legacy of magic. His journey, he realized, was just beginning. Not merely a quest for personal strength or honor, it was a pilgrimage towards understanding, a journey into the heart of a world where legends breathed and the very air shimmered with enchantment. As summer waned and the cooling nights replaced the brutal heat of earlier months, Kalen set out on a path that would eventually lead him to the realms of deeper mystery, a place where long-forgotten ruins lay hidden beneath the sprawling boughs of enchanted forests, and where the whispers of ancient magic still echoed among the crumbling stones. With his blade at his side and the medallion ever present around his neck, he ventured forth, determined to uncover the truths that awaited him in the vast, unpredictable world beyond his village. His progress was slow and deliberate. Each step was measured against the weight of his past and the promise of what might be. And though the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, Kalen embraced it with a burgeoning hope, a hope that each challenge, each fleeting victory, would draw him closer to the mastery of the magic within him and ultimately, to the fulfillment of the destiny that had been awakened on that fateful day. Thus, in the quiet interplay of battle loss and the dawning of an inner light, the wanderer had been born. The awakening was not an end, but the beginning of an epic journey, one that promised growth, hardship, and the inexorable pull of destiny. As he rode through the rugged landscapes of his homeland, with the chill of early autumn in the air and the soft murmur of ancient magic guiding his way, Kaelin's path unfurled like a long-forgotten scroll, its words waiting to be discovered, its secrets eager to be revealed. His was a journey that would shape not only his future, but the fate of a realm steeped in forgotten lore and the timeless force of magic, where every heartbeat was a step towards becoming the master of his own legend. And so, beneath the sprawling canvas of a twilight sky, Kaelin the awakened wanderer pressed on, each stride a silent promise to rise, to overcome and to carve a name for himself in the ever-turning tapestry of fate. Kaelin's journey began at dawn on the day following his miraculous awakening, a day that felt as though it were born not merely from the rising sun, but from the spark of destiny itself. The medallion that hung close to his heart pulsed with a quiet inner luminescence, as if softly urging him to leave the familiar safety of Raldar behind. With his sword strapped to his side and a worn leather pack containing few precious belongings, he took his first tentative steps down the winding dirt path that led to the Painted Forest, a fabled woodland known for its shifting, vibrant colors and its reputation for harboring relics of forgotten magic. The Painted Forest had long been whispered about by wandering bards and reclusive elders. They told tales of trees whose leaves shimmered like liquid gold, streams that sang with the voices of ancient spirits, and secret clearings where the boundary between mortal and magical realms was said to blur. For Kaelin, whose soul now stirred with a newfound arcane power, the forest offered both an invitation and a test, a place where the true extent of his transformation might be measured against the timeless wonders and hidden dangers of an untamed world. As he ventured into the forest, the landscape underwent a wondrous metamorphosis. The plain earthen path gave way to a realm of radiant hues, towering trees whose bark appeared painted by unseen masters, leaves in shades of crimson, magenta, and emerald fluttering to the symphony of a gentle breeze, and the air itself shimmered with motes of light that danced like suspended stars. Each step further into the forest deepened the mystery, as if the very ground beneath his feet was whispering secrets of a long-forgotten era when magic was a living, breathing presence in every creature and stone. After hours of solitary travel, Kaelin arrived at a natural clearing, where the forest seemed to open into a broad, sunlit glade. Here, the air felt particularly charged with magic, its vibrational hum a constant undercurrent that resonated with the rhythm of his own pulse. He paused at the edge of a crystalline pond, its waters mirroring the kaleidoscopic sky, and allowed himself a moment of introspection. The simple beauty before him sparked memories of his childhood days when he first learned to wield a sword without the weight of regret, when the future had shimmered with possibilities unclouded by the burdens of loss. Yet now his heart carried the bittersweet flame of rebirth, and he knew that beyond the beauty lay challenges yet unmet. It was in this serene interlude that Kaelin first encountered Lysariel, the wise elven mystic, whose presence seemed to merge with the very essence of the forest. She appeared as if born of light and foliage, ethereal and graceful, with silver hair cascading over an intricately embroidered robe of forest greens and deep blues. Lysariel's eyes, deep pools of ancient knowledge, assessed Kaelin with an unspoken intensity, as though discerning secrets hidden even from himself. With a voice as soft as the rustle of leaves yet as compelling as the call of a distant songbird, she greeted him. "You carry within you a fire that is both fierce and fragile," Lysariel said, her tone measured and calm. "The forest has recognized your awakening, young warrior, and I sense that your path is intertwined with the old magic of our realm. Tell me, what is it that you seek?" Kaelin, still uncertain of the exact nature of his quest, beyond his burgeoning desire to become stronger and to reshape his destiny, replied with careful candor. "I seek understanding, and perhaps redemption. I have been given a power I scarcely comprehend, a gift, or perhaps a curse that calls me to leave behind the life I once knew. I do not know where this road leads, only that I must follow it if I am to learn its purpose." Lysariel's gaze softened with an empathic warmth. "Then come with me, and I will guide you through the ancient wisdom of our people. The Painted Forest is not merely a place of beauty, but a vast library of nature's lore. Within its depths, you will find not only challenges, but also allies who can aid you in mastering your new self. Intrigued, and with little left to lose, Kaelin agreed, and the pair set off together. Their journey through the forest was like a dream, a melding of reality and mysticism that gradually unfolded with both gentle revelations and sudden tests. As they advanced deeper into the forest's heart, they came upon a narrow, winding path bordered by towering trees whose trunks were inscribed with moss-covered runes. The path led them to a small, weather-beaten stone bridge, spanning a babbling brook that sparkled with hints of opalescent light. Here, the forest revealed yet another of its guardians, Brahm, a gruff, battle-scarred dwarf whose imposing frame and deep, rumbling laughter belied a profound loyalty to traditions of honor and craftsmanship. Brahm was tending to an ancient forge beneath an outcrop of rugged rock, a forge that was said to be warmed by the residual magic of fallen stars. "Ah, strangers," Brahm bellowed in a hearty, gravelly voice as Kaelin and Lyseriel approached. "What brings you to my humble dwelling in these enchanted woods?" His eyes, twinkling with mirth and wisdom, quickly assessed Kaelin's presence and the medallion that now pulsed with a strange inner light. "I see a spark in you, a nascent magic that calls for nurturing. Perhaps you can help me rekindle the old ways of the forge. For in our craft there is much wisdom to be gleaned about the balance between fire and steel." Encouraged by Brahm's warmth and the promise of further guidance, Kaelin and Lyseriel accepted his invitation to rest by the forge. Over hearty cups of spiced ale and plates of dwarven stew, Brahm recounted stories of the painted forest past, tales of mighty heroes, tragic battles, and the enduring power of the land itself. He spoke of the ancient runes that governed the flow of natural magic and of how the art of forging was once considered sacred, a means to imbue weapons and armor with the very essence of the elements. Brahm's narrative wove a tapestry rich in detail and vigor, and as the fire in his forge roared to life, Kaelin felt an inexplicable connection to the elemental forces that had shaped his very world. For the first time since his awakening, the swordsman's heart was stirred not only by the call to battle but also by the realization that true strength was tempered by knowledge and by the loyalty of newfound companions. As the trio prepared to leave the comfort of the forge, Lyseriel suggested that their journey continue towards the eastern edge of the painted forest, a region known among the elves as the Veiled Glade, where mist and magic coalesced to create illusions that tested one's soul. There, hidden amidst shimmering veils of light and shadow, lies an ancient oracle, she explained. This oracle is said to communicate with the spirits of our ancestors, and it can unlock truths not found in mortal scrolls. It may hold the answers to the questions that tug at your heart, Kaelin. Their journey toward the Veiled Glade was fraught with small perils and unexpected wonders. The forest thickened as they traveled, the canopy overhead weaving a tapestry so dense that only sporadic shafts of sunlight penetrated the gloom. Along the way, they encountered a motley assortment of characters, a caravan of wandering minstrels carrying tales of lost kingdoms, a reclusive herbalist whose knowledge of potent medicinal and mystical plants was renowned among both peasants and nobles, and even a small band of roving bandits who attempted to steal valuables from unsuspecting travelers. In each encounter, Kaelin's newly awakened powers began to manifest subtly, his keen senses heightened by the magic that now flowed through him, his reflexes made swifter, and his presence exuding an aura of determination that dissuaded many foes from daring to cross his path. During one such skirmish on a narrow woodland trail, a group of hapless brigands attempted a poorly orchestrated ambush. With effortless precision, Kaelin parried their crude attacks, his blade slicing through the air in a dance that was both elegant and lethal. Lyseriel, with her mystical incantations, created blinding bursts of light that disoriented the attackers, while Brahm's booming laughter and swift decisive blows sent several foes scattering into the underbrush. The encounter left Kaelin with a growing respect for the unpredictable nature of battle and the invaluable role of unity in the face of danger. Though the brigands' lives were snuffed out as quickly as they had appeared, their brief menace added a stark, visceral note to the day's journey, reminding each traveler that the road to mastery was lined with both wonder and peril. As dusk fell upon the eastern edge of the forest, the trio found themselves approaching the fabled Veiled Glade. The air here was cooler, imbued with the soft, haunting strains of a melody carried by the wind, a lullaby seemingly sung by the spirits of the lost. A thick, luminous mist swirled around ancient stone monuments, their surfaces covered in delicate patterns of lichen and mystery. At the center of the glade, shrouded in the perpetual twilight of enchanted vapors, stood the Oracle of Ilarion, a monolithic structure carved from pale stone and adorned with faded glyphs that glowed faintly with an inner light. It was a place of quiet power, where the boundary between the living and the ethereal was as delicate as a spun web. Under a sky filled with 1,000 silent stars, Lysirael led Kalin and Brahm into the glade. They knelt before the oracle, and for a long, suspended moment, the only sound was the soft murmur of the wind echoing through the ancient stones. Slowly, a voice emerged from the ether, a sound that was neither male nor female, ancient and filled with timeless wisdom. Seek not only to wield power, but to understand its price, the oracle intoned. Its words, though cryptic, resonated with Kalin's innermost yearnings. In that spectral echo, he heard hints of destinies entwined with sacrifice, of legends born on the wings of loss, and the gentle promise of renewal. The experience left Kalin both humbled and emboldened. As he rose from his place before the oracle, he felt as if a veil had been lifted from his soul, revealing that the journey ahead was not solely about becoming a master swordsman or arcane warrior, but about discovering the delicate equilibrium between strength and wisdom, action and reflection. The oracle's message lingered in the cool night air, a promise that the path to greatness was paved with both light and shadow. That night, as the trio made camp at the edge of the glade, their small fire crackled and danced in defiance of the encroaching mist. Over their shared meal, Brahm recounted tales of ancient heroes who had once traversed these very lands, men and women of renown, who had balanced the scales of might and magic with great cost. Lysirael, with soft smiles and measured words, offered insights into the deeper lore of the elven mystics, a legacy of eternal learning and quiet perseverance passed down through millennia. And Kalin, silently absorbing every word, found his resolve deepening. He realized that his personal journey was only a single thread in the vast tapestry of the realm, one that intertwined with those around him. Each encounter, each challenge, a lesson that would fortify his spirit. In the heart of the glade, where mist and memory blurred, Kalin finally allowed himself to dream of what might be. His thoughts wandered freely, visions of triumphant battles fought not just for honor, but for the restoration of a forgotten equilibrium, of quiet moments of introspection under starlit skies, and of a future where the art of the sword was as much a discipline of the heart as it was a display of raw power. He recognized that the painted forest, with all its mystique and magical allure, was but the beginning of a long journey, a journey that would take him through lands of shifting allegiances, fierce warriors, cunning mages, and countless souls whose lives flashed as swiftly as shooting stars. Every step forward would demand courage, every friend earned through shared hardship would count, and every loss suffered along the way would carve out space for growth in his troubled heart. As the night deepened, Lysirael and Brahm retired to their own quiet reflections, leaving Kalin to sit alone by the fire. The flames cast flickering shadows over his rugged features, and in the silence that followed, he traced the delicate symbols on the medallion that hung against his chest. Each curve and line of the relic seemed to sing a silent hymn, a reminder of the power that had awakened within him, and the price that must be paid for every gift granted by the ancient magic. The solitude of that moment, interwoven with the gentle sounds of the glade and the distant rustle of ancient leaves, allowed him to embrace both the wonder and the weight of his destiny. Dawn broke slowly over the horizon, revealing a tapestry of vivid colors as the mist receded to reveal the splendor of the painted forest in all its glory. Renewed by the stillness of the night and the quiet knowledge imparted by the oracle, Kalin resolved to continue his journey with newfound purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with both beauty and danger, but he knew that he was not alone. In the company of Lysirael and Brahm, and in the legacy of those who had come before him, his heart surged with the determination to become more than just a fighter, to become a living embodiment of balance between might and magic. With the rising sun heralding a day of new beginnings, Kalin gathered his few possessions, and with a final lingering look at the sacred veiled glade, set forth once more along the winding trail. The forest around him responded in kind. Birds sang hopeful refrains, the leaves whispered ancient secrets, and the very ground beneath him seemed to guide his steps with quiet assurance. Every footfall was imbued with a promise that his journey was far from complete, that each challenge and every fleeting moment of wonder would add a vibrant note to the epic ballad of his life. Thus, as the painted forest bathed in the resplendent light of dawn, Kalen the awakened swordsman advanced into the unknown with cautious optimism and unyielding resolve. His journey along this road was just beginning, each step unveiling another chapter, each encounter deepening his understanding of the delicate interplay between valor and vulnerability. And as he pressed on, the natural world around him seemed to echo his silent vow that the true path to mastery lay not in the accumulation of strength alone, but in the relentless pursuit of wisdom, unity, and the courage to embrace both light and shadow in equal measure. The day had grown grim and unyielding by the time Kalen and his companions approached the Crimson Citadel. Its towering ramparts, scarred by time and battle, loomed on the horizon like the weathered face of a fallen god. The citadel, a relic of a bygone era when honor and valor were woven into the very stone, had once been a beacon of safety, a fortress where nobility and warriors gathered to forge alliances and battle common foes. Now it stood as a bulwark against chaos in a land ravaged by war and strife. For Kalen, the citadel promised refuge, not only from the marauding brigands and outlaw forces that stalked the roads, but also from the inner turmoil that had plagued him since his awakening. His newfound magic still pulsed within him, delicate and raw, and its uncertain glow cast shifting patterns over the rugged terrain as if urging him onward. As the ragtag group drew closer, the pervasive sound of distant clamor reached their ears, a sullen, unsteady drumbeat that resonated like the heartbeat of a dying giant. It was a sound that spoke of approaching danger and mounting siege. In the dim light of early dusk, Kalen could see scattered movements around the perimeter of the citadel, silhouettes of men in tattered cloaks and stained armor, hurried figures flitting along crumbling parapets, and the occasional flash of steel reflecting the faint glow of twilight. The citadel's gate, reinforced by heavy oaken doors bound with iron, bore marks of previous conflicts, scars that testified to its enduring legacy as both a fortress and a prison of its own storied past. Kalen's group, now numbering a modest but determined few, entered the outer courtyard under cover of a hastily arranged plan. Lyseriel, the elven mystic who had accompanied him from the painted forest, moved with a graceful, unhurried determination. Her eyes, deep as ancient wells of knowledge, scanned the surroundings constantly, attuned to any hint of treachery. Brahm, the stalwart dwarf warrior they had met by the forge, grunted words of caution as he hefted his axe and led the vanguard. Alongside them were several minor figures, a lanky, quiet scribe who had pledged his loyalty after hearing Kalen's tale, two brash, opportunistic mercenaries whose loyalty rested on coin and honor alike, and a pair of weary peasants, their faces etched with hardship, who had sought shelter from the encroaching brigands. Together they formed an uneasy band of survivors, each driven by personal goals yet united by the pressing need to protect what little hope remained. Once inside the citadel's courtyard, they found temporary respite among shattered statues and rubble-strewn paths. The air was thick with dust and the acrid scent of burning wood, a lingering reminder of earlier skirmishes on the outskirts of the fortress. Kalen set his gaze upon a battered stone mural near the entrance, half eroded by time yet still bearing the visage of a long-forgotten hero. In that moment, as the dying light of the day mingled with the uncertain glows of his awakening power, Kalen felt the weight of his destiny pressing down like a mantle of responsibility. His journey from a rough-hewn swordsman to a wielder of magic was no longer solely about his personal rebirth. It was about igniting a spark of unity in the hearts of those who had been abandoned by fate. Within the ruined halls of the citadel, Kalen and his companions quickly learned that refuge was a double-edged sword. The fortress, while offering temporary shelter, was itself under threat. Rumors had long circulated among the defenders, noble families whose fortunes had been tied to the citadel, once proud but now reduced to desperate pride, that enemy forces were amassing just beyond the outer walls. The marauding band of brigands and dissolute knights, known collectively as the Crimson Legion, had long coveted the strategic vantage of the fortress, believing that its capture would send ripples of terror throughout the region. Their attacks were not mere raids, they were methodical, exacting punishment upon those who dared maintain the old order. In this siege, every moment was a battle, every shadow a potential ambush. As twilight deepened into a merciless night, Kalen took stock of their situation. Clad in battered leather and rough-spun mail, his every breath was heavy with contemplation and determination. Gathered in the largest chamber of the citadel, a grand hall adorned with fractured stained glass and remnants of frescoes depicting ancient heroes, he addressed his companions. The hall, once resplendent with the glory of the citadel's golden era, now echoed with whispered promises of survival and fear. His voice, steady, despite the tremor of uncertainty, called for unity and vigilance. Friends, our refuge is temporary, and our enemy draws near. We must fortify these walls, tend to our wounds, and prepare for the coming siege. Each of us has been spared not by accident, but by fate's own design. In our struggles we will find the strength to endure, and perhaps to strike back. His words, earnest and resonant, stirred varied emotions among those present. The scribe, whose delicate hands had once caressed the pages of forgotten lore, scribbled hurried notes in a leather-bound journal. The mercenaries exchanged glances that mixed cynicism with hope, while the peasants' tired, sorrowful souls nodded in silent agreement. Lysariel's luminous eyes met his, and her subtle smile conveyed both confidence and a promise of arcane aid. Even Brahm grunted his assent, the raw, pragmatic wisdom of the dwarf evident in his measured tones. The seed of leadership was sown, and in that hallowed, dilapidated hall the ragtag defenders prepared for the long night ahead. The first assault came in the dead of night, when the world was hushed beneath a shroud of oppressive stillness. There was a sudden piercing clamor at the gate, a cacophony of cries and clashing metal that shattered the brief lull of silence. Kalen's instincts propelled him from the central hall as he joined the men and women at the outer defenses. Under a tumultuous sky, he saw the first wave of the Crimson Legion surge forward. Their banners emblazoned with a blood-red emblem that seemed to symbolize their ruthless ambition, fluttered ominously as they advanced. The enemy was well organized. Their formation was disciplined, each soldier moving in unison as if guided by the same dark spirit of retribution. The clash was as sudden as it was brutal. The sound of steel meeting steel filled the air as defenders and attackers collided along the crumbling ramparts. Kalen's blade, now suffused with the faint glow of his awakening magic, flashed through the air with a determined lethality. Each swing was a blend of practiced skill and raw, newfound power. He parried vicious blows and struck with precision, his movements a dance of both sword and sorcery. The medallion around his neck pulsed in time with his heartbeat, an ever-present reminder of the destiny that had chosen him. In the midst of the fray, the cacophonous din of combat was punctuated by individual acts of valor and tragic loss. A noble captain, desperate to defend his lineage, fell heroically as his sword broke, his last cry a testament to the fading glory of his house. A street urchin, unaccustomed to the gravitas of battle yet moved by an unexpected surge of courage, managed to distract a group of attackers with her piercing screams and nimble agility, her sacrifice etched into the memories of those who survived. Everywhere the human spirit clashed with the brutal reality of war, each soul caught in the unforgiving grip of a siege that would test the mettle of the living. Kalen fought through the chaos, the aura of his blade lighting up the darkness like a spark in the night. Amid the swirling melee, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, Marcus, one of the mercenary companions who had joined their cause for gold and glory, now fighting with an intensity that belied his pragmatic nature. Marcus's eyes, wild with desperation, locked with Kalen's, and in that fleeting exchange, a silent pact was renewed to hold the line, to fight for every breath and to protect the innocent who had sought shelter within these ancient walls. For hours the siege raged in a never-ending spiral of assaults and brief respites. The defenders, though outnumbered and weathered by previous skirmishes, harnessed a unity born from necessity and shared hardship. Lysariel's arcane incantations provided bursts of magical defense, glittering shields of light that repelled the dark onslaught, while Brahm's axe swung in savage arcs, each blow a punctuation mark in the brutal language of war. The noble captain's fallen standard, inspired a few remaining knights to rally with renewed determination, their voices rising in a defiant chorus that clashed with the hissing curses of the enemy. During one particularly relentless surge, the enemy managed to breach a section of the outer wall. The invaders poured into the courtyard with ferocity, their faces set in grim determination as they sought to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers. Chaos reigned as hand-to-hand combat erupted in the narrow space between the broken ramparts and the central hall. It was in the midst of this maelstrom that Kalen found himself fighting not only for his own survival, but for the soul of the citadel itself. Every parry, every lunge was imbued with a desperate hope, a silent declaration that this ancient fortress would not fall so easily. Time seemed to blur in the face of such relentless combat. The night stretched interminably, with each minute marked by both staggering losses and unexpected triumphs. The defenders, though battered and bruised, began to develop improvised strategies. Some took to the higher battlements, launching arrows and crude magical projectiles that disrupted the enemy's advance. Others, bolstered by Lysariel's healing spells, formed tight clusters to protect the wounded and rally amidst the chaos. Kalen himself, his mind a maelstrom of strategy and emotion, navigated the battlefield with a growing awareness of his own role. He realized that his capacity to channel magic was not just a gift for personal glory, but a burden of leadership, a call to be the beacon that held the fragile line between order and anarchy. Amid the endless tide of enemies, a moment of stillness emerged like a brief pause in a raging storm. Near a shattered fountain in the courtyard, Kalen found a pocket of reprieve. Here the sounds of battle were muted by the distance, and the fractured echoes of a once glorious monument. In that temporary stillness, he allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. His thoughts wandered back to the simple dreams of his youth, days spent training under the sun, laughing with comrades, and living without the crushing weight of expectation. Those memories, both sweet and sorrowful, fueled his resolve. He knew that to survive the siege, he would have to merge the strength of his sword with the burgeoning magic that now set his soul afire. In that fusion, he could become more than a mere warrior, he could become a legend. But no moment of quiet lasts long in times of war. The respite was shattered when a piercing cry echoed across the courtyard, the sound of a defender falling, and with it the spark of hope that had glimmered so brightly. Kalen rushed to the source of the cry, arriving to find a young squire, no more than a boy, overwhelmed by a pair of enemy cutthroats. Rage and sorrow surged within him, and in that moment, the medallion around his neck seemed to blaze with uncontainable energy. With a cry that mixed grief with raw determination, he dove into the fray, his blade meeting the aggressors with a fury that lent him strength beyond mortal measure. Sparks flew as his sword flashed, and the adversaries were left gasping under the onslaught of a power that was at once both unfamiliar and undeniably potent. The boy was saved, but the cost was etched on Kalen's soul, a reminder that every act of valor bore the weight of sacrifice. As the battle wore on, the relentless siege began to exact its toll on the defenders. The Crimson Legion, though fierce and numerous, found themselves bogged down by the resilience of those who fought not only with muscle but with the heart. Yet fatigue and wounds, both seen and hidden, gnawed at the spirit of the citadel's inhabitants. The once hallowed hallways now echoed with the laments of the wounded and the anguished shouts of those who had lost comrades. Amid the desolation, Kalen's leadership crystallized further. He moved through the battlefield, not merely as a fighter, but as the living embodiment of the citadel's enduring hope, a beacon that rallied each faltering soul to stand once more. In the midst of this brutal tapestry, alliances forged in the crucible of crisis began to prove their worth. Marcus, who had once been a mere ally, emerged as a critical strategist, coordinating small bands of defenders to cover vulnerable flanks and lead surprise counterattacks against isolated enemy groups. Lysariel's calm, measured incantations not only repelled the relentless dark magic of the foes, but also mended the fractures in the wounded defenders' spirits, each healing word a small miracle amid the carnage. Brahm, with a roguish humor rare in the grim context of war, became the steadfast bulwark on the front lines, his mighty swings carving paths through the enemy that rekindled the ancient pride of the citadel's legacy. Yet the siege was not simply an affair of brute force and martial valor. It was also a swirling vortex of human emotion, ethical dilemmas, and the echoing specters of the past. In the smoky corners of the courtyard, where makeshift infirmaries had been hastily established, Kalen observed the toll the battle exacted on both the strong and the frail. An aged knight, once a hero of forgotten battles, lay with his eyes closed, a peaceful resignation on his lined face. A cluster of local villagers, whose lives had intertwined with the citadel's fortunes, huddled together under makeshift tents, their eyes red with grief and worry. The stark contrast between the ferocity of combat and the tender vulnerability of those who had found refuge within these ancient walls was a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Night melded into a bitter, unyielding dawn as the relentless cycle of attack and reprieve continued. The Crimson Legion, though formidable, had begun to show cracks in its organization. Disciplined maneuvers faltered beneath the sustained onslaught of unified resistance. Yet the cost of victory became ever steeper. Every faltering heartbeat and every call for aid spurred Kalen onward, his determination hardening into a quiet, unyielding command. In moments of chaotic clarity, he would raise his voice over the clamor, his words a mixture of strategy and heartfelt appeal. Hold the line, my friends. Every sacrifice is a seed of hope. Each fallen warrior is a reminder that we must fight not just for survival, but for the future we dare to imagine. His rallying cry, raw and sincere, resonated with those who still clung to hope. Though the enemy pressed with renewed vigor following each setback, the defenders began to adapt. Improvised barricades were raised from piles of rubble, strategic vantage points were seized, and the human spirit, though battered, shone with a stubborn defiance. The night's darkness was punctured by intermittent clashes, a symphony of clanging swords, shouted orders, and the occasional cry of triumph as a small enemy unit was repelled. In one such skirmish near a collapsed turret, Kalen found himself nearly overwhelmed by a particularly aggressive band of brigands. Their leader, a gaunt, ruthless figure with eyes like frozen steel, saw in Kalen the embodiment of the Citadel's dwindling hope and pressed an all-out attack. The duel was fierce, with Kalen meeting every thrust and parry, with a measured blend of his hardened swordsmanship and the mysterious new magic that now flowed through him. Each clash of steel sparked arcs of shimmering energy, and for a fleeting moment, the din of combat seemed to recede into a profound silence, a pulse of suspended time in which Kalen's inner light flared with raw intensity. With a final resolute cry, he disarmed the enemy leader, his blade a beacon of defiant brilliance in the midst of darkness. The fallen leader's eyes met his for a heartbeat, and in that silent exchange, Kalen saw not malice alone, but the deep-seated terror of a soul confronted with its own hopelessness. As the siege raged on with unyielding persistence, Kalen's group found that the enemy's tactics were evolving. They began to employ siege engines, rams and crude catapults that battered the dilapidated walls of the citadel, sending shards of stone flying in a hail of destructive momentum. The impact of each barrage reverberated through the very foundations of the fortress, shaking the resolve of even the most stalwart defenders. It was during one such devastating assault that the outer gate was nearly breached. The defenders rallied with a fury born of desperation, their combined might forming an impromptu wall of shield and steel. In that desperate moment, Kalen, his eyes burning with determination, strode forward to hold the breach. His blade flashed in defiance, and with every swing he carved a path through the enemy ranks, his every heartbeat a silent promise to protect the citadel at any cost. Throughout the bloody hours of the siege, the human drama unfolded in all its tragic, glorious splendor. Amid the chaos, quiet acts of heroism flickered like distant stars. A young stable boy, hidden behind crates of hay, found the courage to rescue an injured noble woman and carry her to safety. A grizzled veteran recounted tales of ancient battles to bolster the morale of a group of frightened children, and in the midst of the incessant violence, a traveling bard strummed a melancholy tune on his battered lute, his song a bittersweet reminder that even in the shadow of despair, hope could still blossom. In the time-worn corridors and smoke-choked battlements of the Crimson Citadel, the siege was more than a physical confrontation. It was a crucible in which every emotion, every dream of a better future was put to the test. Each loss, Each victory was etched upon the hearts of those who fought, forging bonds that transcended the individual and spoke of an enduring collective spirit. Kalen, witnessing the cascading array of human sorrow and fierce resilience, felt his own soul swell with a grim understanding. He realized that the battle was not simply against the invading Crimson Legion, but against the erosion of hope itself, a creeping despair that threatened to smother the light of every living soul within these hallowed walls. As dawn approached once more, casting a pale glow over the bloodied ramparts and shattered courtyards, the defenders were battered yet unbowed. The enemy's advance had been halted temporarily, but at a steep cost. The wounded were tended to in makeshift infirmaries, and the survivors huddled together with murmurs of grief and quiet resolve. Kalen found himself amidst this tumult, his thoughts a swirling blend of anger, sorrow, and a burgeoning sense of duty. The medallion around his neck pulsed softly, as if echoing the rhythm of his heartbeat, a silent reminder that his journey had transformed him from a mere swordsman into something more. In that fragile light of a new day, with the echoes of battle fading into a tentative silence, Kalen resolved that the siege, however arduous, would forge him into the leader he was destined to become. Yet even in the midst of intermittent peace, the threat was never far away. The Crimson Legion, though repelled for now, continued to mass at the edges of the citadel, their eyes burning with the promise of renewed assault. Every whisper of movement in the dark, every distant clamor, served as a reminder that the struggle was far from over, and that the price of survival was vigilance, sacrifice, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. The citadel, scarred by centuries of conflict, now bore the fresh wounds of a battle that would test the very essence of its legacy. As the defenders rallied for another phase of the onslaught, a determined stand on the ramparts that overlooked the vast, uncertain expanse of the besieging forces, Kalen stepped forward once more. The chill of the early morning air mingled with the acrid smell of smoke and blood as he surveyed the battlements with a leader's intensity. His eyes, narrowed in steely determination, met those of his comrades, and in that silent communication, they found the shared resolve to see the night through. Every man and woman, from the noble knights still clad in remnants of regalia, to the rough-hewn soldiers who had grown up amidst hardship, gathered as one, a tapestry of defiant souls united under a common banner of hope and endurance. And so, as the siege raged with unremitting ferocity, and the Crimson Legion prepared for its next assault, Kalen and his band of survivors braced themselves for the battles yet to come. Every strike of the enemy, every cry of anguish or defiance, was etched into the annals of the Citadel's enduring legend, an epic saga of courage and sacrifice that would in time serve as the foundation of a new era. Yet, amid the chaos and carnage, one truth remained immutable, that in the crucible of war, every loss forged a deeper understanding, every victory kindled the spark of hope, and every heartbeat of those who fought together resounded with the promise that the light of humanity would endure, no matter how dark the night. Thus, in the relentless storm of siege and strife, the Crimson Citadel stood as both a stronghold and a beacon, a testament to the indomitable will of those who refused to yield. And as the battle continued, with each passing moment a mix of valor, despair, and resolute defiance, Kalen's journey, a journey marked by both the harsh clangor of steel and the tender glow of emerging magic, moved inexorably forward into a future fraught with uncertainty and the bitter, poignant knowledge that greatness is forged only in the fires of adversity. The morning after the siege, when the dew still clung to shattered stone and the cries of battle had faded into an uneasy silence, Kalen, alongside Lysariel and Brahm, gathered what strength they could muster. However, the fate of the Crimson Citadel was sealed only for that chapter of his journey, and the call of destiny beckoned him elsewhere. Rumors had reached their ears. A voice on the wind whispered in the tongues of ancient bards of a fallen empire, now little more than scattered ruins and ghostly echoes of past grandeur. It was said that in the heart of this lost realm lay the secrets to the very nature of magic, secrets that might answer questions about the relic that had awakened him and the hidden truth of his own heritage. With heavy hearts and eyes fixed on distant horizons, Kalen and his companions set out along a winding road that led away from the safety of the citadel and into a wilderness that bore the weight of bygone splendor and unspoken sorrow. The landscape gradually shifted from battle-scarred plains to a land of melancholic beauty, rolling hills carpeted in dew-drenched grasses, ancient trees twisting skyward like the spires of a forgotten cathedral, and mist-shrouded valleys where light and shadow mingled in timeless embrace. It was in these somber lands that Kalen first perceived the uncanny stillness that presaged a place of deep mystery. The road narrowed as they approached the outskirts of the fallen empire, a region once known as Vardamar, a mighty kingdom that had flourished under a golden age of magic and brotherhood. Now, only hushed ruins remained, toppled statues of legendary heroes, moss-clad marble columns that had once held aloft magnificent domes, and overgrown courtyards where the laughter of nobility had long since faded into silence. After several days of travel through this somber terrain, the company arrived at the edge of Vardamar's once glorious capital, a city now reduced to a labyrinth of crumbling stone and sorrowful memories. Here the echoes of ancient splendor vibrated faintly beneath layers of neglect and decay. Kalen found himself overwhelmed by the palpable sadness that seemed to emanate from every ruined arch and shattered mosaic. It was a place where even the wind seemed to mourn, whispering elegies for a lost civilization, whose faith in the harmonious balance of magic had been shattered by time, ambition, and unforeseen calamity. As they cautiously explored the desolate city, Kalen's gaze was drawn to a massive ruined palace that rose at the center like a solitary monument to forgotten glory. Its once ornate facades were marred by jagged scars, and the grand entrance hung open as if inviting him to enter a world beyond mortal comprehension. The air inside was cool and heavy with the odor of ancient incense and dust, a remnant of ceremonies long past. It was here that fate awaited him in its most elusive form. Wandering slowly through the echoing halls of the ruined palace, Kalen's footsteps fell softly on broken marble and shattered relics. The corridors were lined with portraits of stern-faced monarchs and generals, whose eyes frozen in time seemed to watch him with inscrutable sorrow. In the grand throne room, a cavernous space with a vaulted ceiling that had once resounded with jubilant celebrations, the silence was palpable, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing off the stone walls. It was in this very chamber that Kalen encountered a vision that would change the course of his journey. At first the apparition was but a flicker, a wavering shadow cast at the far end of the hall, but as Kalen drew closer, the figure materialized into a striking presence, a figure robed in tattered finery, with eyes that held the lamentations of countless souls. The specter spoke not in words but in emotions, a torrent of memories that surged into Kalen's mind. He saw visions of a proud lineage, of ancestors who had once wielded magic with both honor and humility, and of a destiny that had been twisted by betrayal and neglect. In that silent communion with the ghost of a fallen king, Kalen learned that his bloodline had once been intertwined with the very fabric of Vardamar's ancient magic, a legacy lost with the Empire's downfall. The weight of this revelation pressed upon his soul as he staggered from the throne room, his mind racing with questions: who had betrayed their kin? How had a once mighty empire crumbled into ruin? And most poignantly, what did this mean for the power that now surged within him? It was clear that the relic he carried was part of a much grander tapestry, one in which destiny and sacrifice had long been interwoven. Yet the clarity of the vision was marred by anguish and regret, and Kalen felt a stirring of his own inner darkness, a quiet challenge to his emerging strength, and a warning that the path to mastery was paved with both luminous hope and shadowed grief. Determined to understand these unfolding mysteries, Kalen left the ruined palace and sought out those who might share in his quest for truth. It was not long before fate introduced him to two unlikely allies in this forsaken land. In the crumbling remains of a once sacred temple dedicated to a long-forgotten sun deity, he encountered Narthiel, a repentant demon warrior, whose horns and eyes marked him as an outcast among his own kind. Once a fierce combatant among the infernal legions, Narthiel had renounced the ruthless practices of his fallen brethren, after witnessing the cruelty inflicted in the name of power. His voice, surprisingly gentle and laden with regret, told of battles fought under blood-red skies and of a path of redemption that was as arduous as it was elusive. With scars that ran not only across his demonic visage, but across his heart, Narthiel sought to atone for a past mired in violence and unrestrained ambition. His presence, although formidable, exuded a fragile hope, an earnest desire to find meaning beyond the destructive chaos of his earlier existence. Not long after their meeting, Kaelin and Narthiel encountered a second traveler in the ruins, a rogue sorceress named Isolde, exiled from her elven kin for delving into forbidden arts. Isolde's reputation had been tainted by scandal and whispers of dark pacts, yet beneath the hood that obscured her striking features lay an intellect as sharp as the finest enchanted blade. She had wandered far from the luminous courts of her people, driven by a restless curiosity and the need to unravel the mysteries that ancient magic concealed. With a mixture of defiance and quiet sorrow, she explained that the downfall of Vardamore was not solely a tale of external betrayal, but also of internal corruption, a slow, insidious decay of the very principles that had once united its diverse peoples. According to her, the empire had been undone not by a single overriding force, but by the cumulative effect of greed, misguided ambition, and a wilting connection to the old ways. Together, the trio formed a tentative alliance, their individual quests converging into a single sprawling search for answers among the ruins of the fallen empire. As they journeyed deeper into the once magnificent capital, their path wove through shadowed streets lined with collapsed archways and desolate marketplaces where the ghosts of past merchants still lingered. Every crumbling wall and shattered relic spoke of a society that had once thrived with vibrant traditions and the harmonious blend of art and magic, only to succumb to the relentless tide of time and hubris. Along the way, Kaelin's internal struggle intensified. The revelation of his ancestral ties to the ancient magic of Vardamore filled him with both pride and a gnawing sense of inadequacy. He began to see reflections of his own doubts in the ruins, a parallel between the decay of an empire and the potential corrosion of his emerging power. Late at night, by the light of a solitary campfire, he would sit quietly with Narthiel and Isolde, sharing tales of loss and love, of battles fought in the name of honor and the painful sacrifices that had punctuated their lives. Narthiel's stories of infernal wars and hard-won redemption resonated deeply with Kaelin, as did Isolde's melancholic recollections of a lost age of beauty and grace among her people. In these moments, the three came to understand that the journey before them was as much about confronting the external specters of a fallen empire as it was about facing the inner demons that threatened to undermine their very essence. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of a sunken palace, with its once ornate chandeliers now hanging in broken fragments and its marble floors cracked by centuries of neglect, they encountered signs of a dark ritual that had marred the land. Scattered about in careful patterns were remnants of arcane symbols, glyphs that pulsed faintly with residual energy, hinting at a time when magic had been harnessed with both precision and passion. These signs, however, bore the unmistakable taint of corruption, as if an unseen hand had sought to twist the sacred language of the gods into something monstrously unholy. Isolde, with her keen scholarly mind, deciphered portions of the runes, her voice heavy with both revelation and despair as she recounted a prophecy that spoke of a time when the magic of the land would break free from its ancient bonds, an event that might usher in either a renaissance of beauty and balance or a cataclysm of unstoppable ruin. The weight of destiny grew heavier with each revelation. Kaelin's heart ached with the realization that the fall of Vardamore was not a tale of mere external conquest, but a complex tapestry woven with threads of betrayal, loss, and the gradual decay of ideals. Every ruined structure, every faded mural on a crumbling wall whispered of a greatness that had once been and might yet be reclaimed, but only at the price of confronting the darkness within. In the silent majesty of the ruined throne room, where a shattered crown lay upon the cold stone steps, Kaelin knelt and allowed himself to weep, not just for the lost glory of an empire, but for the part of himself that he feared might be lost if he were to succumb to the seductive allure of dark power. In the days that followed, as the trio pressed deeper into the heart of the fallen empire, challenges emerged that tested not only their martial prowess, but the very fabric of their souls. They encountered bands of marauders, ruffians twisted by the decay of once noble bloodlines, who attacked without mercy, seeking to loot the relics of a forgotten age. In one grueling confrontation in a long-abandoned courtyard, Kaelin, Narthiel, and Isolde fought side by side against a horde of these roving brigands. The battle was fierce, the clangor of steel and the crackle of raw magic blending into a dissonant symphony that reverberated in the desolate space. Though victory was hard won and the cost in blood immeasurable, the skirmish affirmed the strength of their bond, an unspoken pledge that together, they would stand against the tide of corruption threatening to drown the vestiges of ancient virtue. Between battles, they uncovered more fragments of the past, a crumbled ledger containing the names of long-departed patrons of the arts, a faded tapestry depicting the celestial court of Vardamore's legendary rulers, and a series of cryptic letters exchanged by revered scholars that hinted at hidden rituals meant to purify and restore the land. These discoveries were bittersweet, a testament to what had been and a daunting reminder of how much had been sacrificed in the relentless march of time. Each artifact, each morsel of lore, deepened Kaelin's resolve to reclaim not merely his own honor, but to resurrect the legacy of a culture that had been nearly erased by greed, ambition, and ruin. Yet, amid the gloom and decay, light still persisted. One crisp morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the tattered remains of a majestic mosaic, the group stumbled upon a secret sanctuary concealed beneath a collapsed courtyard. Tucked away behind a crumbling wall was a hidden chamber, a library of sorts where ancient scrolls and sacred texts had been painstakingly preserved by unknown caretakers. Isolde's eyes shone with wonder as she carefully unrolled one of the brittle scrolls, revealing a detailed account of the original celestial bond that once united the people of Vardamore in mutual honor and respect for the land's magic. The text spoke of a ritual of renewal, a ceremony in which the hearts of the faithful were open to the ever-changing flow of magic, allowing both its brilliance and its darkness to coexist in a delicate balance. For Kaelin, this was more than mere lore. It was a glimpse of a forgotten promise, a hope that resonated deep within him, a promise that greatness could be reclaimed through sacrifice, understanding, and unity. The days in the ruins of the fallen empire merged into a tapestry of strife and discovery. As they journeyed through shadowed corridors and beneath the archways of dilapidated temples, Kaelin began to perceive subtle signs that spoke to the dual nature of magic. In one crumbling sanctuary dedicated to an ancient goddess of mercy, he witnessed a miraculous yet sorrowful scene. A wounded child, shunned by the world, was healed by a quiet incantation uttered by a mysterious hermit priest. The child's face, alight with the gentle glow of recovery, reminded Kaelin that the true measure of power was not in its ability to destroy, but to mend and transform. Such encounters, fleeting yet potent, renewed his resolve to harness his gift wisely and to honor the legacy of those who had come before him, even if they had been lost to time. At night, when the cold and solitude pressed in like a tangible force, Kaelin would often find himself lost in contemplation under starlight. He would recall the tender words of the spectral king he had seen in the ruined palace, the melancholy prophecy offered by the shattered murals, and the quiet assurances of the ancient texts in the secret library. Amid the whispering winds and the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by ghostly echoes, the young swordsman grappled with his own inner darkness, the fear that his newfound power might one day twist into something unrecognizable, that the burdens of his lineage might drag him into the abyss of corruption. In these solitary moments, he vowed to remain true to himself, to the ideals of honor and kindness that had been instilled in him long before the medallion's light had ignited his soul. Time, inexorable and unyielding, moved on as the trio pushed ever deeper into the labyrinth of Vardamore. They crossed broken bridges suspended over chasms filled with swirling mists. They navigated corridors where the silence was broken only by the drip of water from ancient stone, and they finally ascended a hill crowned with the remains of an ancient citadel, where the ruins offered a panoramic view of the desolation that had befallen the fallen empire. Here, high above the sorrowful land, Kaelin sensed that the answers he sought lay buried beneath layers of forgotten history and heartfelt sacrifice. It was on this final leg of their journey, as dusk draped the ruined landscape in hues of purple and melancholy gold, that Kaelin, Narthiel, and Isolde uncovered the final piece of the puzzle. In the central courtyard of the citadel's highest tower, amidst toppled columns and overgrown with wild ivy, they discovered a stone sarcophagus adorned with intricate carvings of celestial motifs. Its surface was cool and worn, and the inscriptions told a tale of a once great lineage, one that claimed to be the very progenitors of magic in Vardamore. With trembling hands and hearts aflame with a mix of dread and anticipation, they pried open the heavy lid. Inside lay not a mortal relic, but a delicate scintillating crystal, the gilded shard of ancient magic, a fragment of the Empire's radiant soul. The revelation struck them with the force of a forgotten sunrise. The crystal pulsed rhythmically, its light resonant with the harmony of the old ways, and in its glow Kalen saw visions of what might have been, the unbroken cycle of creation, destruction, and renewal that once gave life to the fallen empire. It was a symbol of both the empire's lost brilliance and its enduring hope, a promise that even in ruin magic could be reborn if only the hearts of men remained steadfast and true. For Kalen, the discovery was profoundly personal. It affirmed that his awakening was intertwined with the fate of Vardamore itself, that his lineage, once thought to be a burden, now held the potential to usher in a rebirth of ancient wonder. Yet even in that exalted moment of revelation, shadows loomed large. The aura of the gilded shard, for all its beauty, carried within it a hint of melancholy, the sorrow of a lost golden age, and the weight of sacrifices borne by those who had dared to dream of a higher purpose. Narthiel, his demonic features etched with empathy and regret, spoke softly. This shard is both a blessing and a burden. Its light can guide us, but if we are not careful, it may also consume us whole. Isolde, her normally impetuous spirit tempered by the gravity of the moment, agreed, her voice hushed yet resolute. We must honor its memory by ensuring that the legacy of this fallen empire is not lost to darkness. We are the custodians of its flame, and our actions must reflect that sacred trust. In the twilight of the citadel, as the newfound revelations mingled with the ever-present whisper of ancient magic, Kalen felt a stirring of hope amid the scars of a broken past. The journey through the fallen empire had transformed him in ways that were both visible and deeply hidden within. He had faced not only the external dangers of marauding brigands and the spectral remnants of a shattered world, but also the internal demons that threatened to undermine his spirit. Each step, each whispered secret in the ruins, had forged him anew, a swordsman bound not only by steel but by the intricate, sometimes painful tapestry of magic and memory. And so, as night settled over the ancient citadel and the gilded shard pulsed with a quiet, enduring light, Kalen, Narthiel, and Isolde gathered in a small circle atop the ruined tower. They spoke in low, fervent tones of the road that lay ahead, a path that would demand further sacrifice, further battles against forces both seen and unseen. No final conclusion was reached that night. Instead, they embraced the uncertainty of their quest with a fervent resolve to uncover the deeper truths that had eluded them for so long. The legacy of the fallen empire was both a mystery and a promise, a call to mend the fractured bonds between past and present, to restore the balance between light and shadow, and to kindle anew the enduring spirit of magic that had once united a mighty civilization. Thus, amidst the weathered stones and ghostly echoes of a once great empire, the journey continued. In the mournful glow of the gilded shard and the resolute silence of ancient ruins, Kalen recognized that every revelation was but a stepping stone on the arduous path toward true mastery, a path that demanded not only the strength of a warrior, but the wisdom of one who embraced both his scars and his dreams. With every breath, every silent prayer under the vault of the starry night, he vowed to honor the legacy of the fallen, to carry forth the light of ancient magic, and to rise, no matter the cost, as a beacon of hope in a world where even the deepest shadows could yield to the gentle, unyielding glow of redemption. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, the remnants of the fallen empire stirred in silent tribute to battles past. Kalen, whose journey had begun in the blood and strife of mundane warfare, now found himself transformed. No longer was he merely a swordsman hardened by endless combat, but a warrior who had learned to embrace the delicate interplay of steel and magic, of honor and sacrifice. The medallion that had awakened him so long ago pulsed gently at his chest, a steady beacon of his destiny, and a quiet testament to every trial he had endured. His companions, Narthiel, the repentant demon warrior, and Isolde, the exiled sorceress, marched closely by his side, their faces etched with both hope and the scars of bitter loss. They had traversed forgotten ruins, faced spectral kings and marauding brigands, and now on a windswept plateau atop the highest towers of Vardamore's ruined citadel, the final confrontation loomed ahead. Before them stretched an expanse of desolation, a valley carved by time and sorrow where the ashes of a once mighty empire mingled with the soft earth. The The citadel's crumbled walls, draped in creepers and bathed in the mournful light of a waning moon, formed the backdrop of a stage set for the ultimate trial. Rumors had whispered that deep within the heart of this forsaken land, the very ley lines of ancient magic would converge, offering a sliver of power capable of reuniting or forever fracturing the balance between creation and destruction. Kalen knew that to ascend as a true master of both sword and spell, he would have to confront not only physical adversaries, but the lingering ghosts of his own turbulent past. The enemy was already at hand, a swirling, murky host that had gathered under the banner of chaos and bitter dissent. They were not a single monstrous force, but the dissonant collection of those who had turned their backs on the old order, renegade warlords, corrupted mystics, and a faction of the once noble Crimson Legion that had splintered in pursuit of power without honor. Their eyes gleamed with feral ambition, and their crude weapons glinted under the cold glare of the impending day. At their helm, a man known only as the Black Herald strode forward. His presence was magnetic, exuding a potent mixture of cruelty and despair, as if he had swallowed the darkness and spewed it forth upon the world. He raised his hand, and with a voice that trembled with ancient malediction, bellowed a challenge to those who would dare oppose him. The battlefield was a panoramic expanse of ruined stone and shattered relics. Distant echoes of fallen empires seemed to murmur from the broken archways and collapsed towers. As Kalen surveyed the scene, every detail resonated with purpose. Every scar on the earth, every dislodged piece of pottery, became part of an epic memory, a chronicle of valor, folly, and the haunting cost of unchecked ambition. His heart thundered in his chest, each beat carrying the memory of his companions, of the innocence lost in the ceaseless tide of battle, and of the painful lessons that had forged him. Yet, amid all of this, there shone an undeniable truth, that true strength was not measured solely by the force of one's arm or the sharpness of one's blade, but by the capacity to rise again and again from the depths of despair. With a wordless nod from his allies, Kalen strode forward, the medallion glowing with an intensity that belied the calm on his face. He led the charge into the fray, his sword a blur of silvery light. Each swing was imbued with the pure resolve of a man who had seen both the abyss and the brilliance of rebirth. The Black Herald's forces surged forth like a violent tide. They clashed with the defenders in a symphony of clanging steel and guttural roars, punctuated by bursts of arcane energy that flared and dissipated in the cold morning air. In the midst of the chaos, Kalen found himself locked in combat with a towering adversary, a hulking warrior draped in spiked armor and carrying a massive warhammer that had seen countless battles. Their duel was fierce and unyielding, a dance of brutality and precision. With each clash, sparks flew in brilliant arcs, and Kalen's every parry and thrust resonated with a quiet magic that set his blade aglow. The medallion pulsed in harmony with his movements, as though echoing the ancient rhythm of a forgotten song, a song of loss and hope intermingled. In a daring move born of desperation and clarity, Kalen feinted and struck true, shattering his opponent's guard and sending the giant crashing to the ground. The crowd around them, a mixture of defiant soldiers and weary villagers turned warriors, roared their approval, their voices rising as one against the encroaching darkness. Yet the battle was far from over. The Black Herald, a figure shrouded in mystery and malice, now advanced towards Kalen with a predatory grace. In the moments that followed, the air seemed to thicken with tension, and the clash between light and shadow reached a fevered pitch. Their confrontation was not merely a test of physical might, but a collision of two distinct philosophies. Kalen's belief in redemption, unity, and the measured, tempered use of power versus the Herald's doctrine of ruthless domination, a creed that held that only through the complete annihilation of weakness could true strength be forged. As the Herald raised his weapon, a blade as black and cold as the void between the stars, Kalen's eyes burned with determination. In that silent exchange, something shifted within him, a realization that his journey had been one of growth, of pain, of learning to channel both his anger and his sorrow into something transcendent. With a cry that shook the very ground, he met the Herald's challenge head-on. Their blades met with a resounding clash that echoed through the battlefield like the toll of a great bell. Time seemed to slow as Kalen's senses sharpened. The cacophony of battle faded into a single sharp note of resolve. In the quiet interlude, memories of every sacrifice, every fleeting moment of beauty amidst the chaos, flowed through him, Memories of his fallen comrades, of the solitary nights under starlight where he had wrestled with doubt, and of the promise that burned within him despite the darkness. With renewed vigor, he unleashed a flurry of strikes that were at once graceful and devastating. Each blow carried the weight of his destiny, and with every parry he felt the creeping tendrils of corruption recede. In that epic struggle, Kalen transcended the limitations of a mere mortal fighter. He became a living symbol of hope, a beacon for all those who dared to dream of a better world amidst the ashes of despair. Around them the battle raged with relentless fury. Lyceril and Brahm, alongside countless others who had banded together in defiance of the oppressive force, fought with unyielding courage. Lyceril, the elven mystic with eyes like twilight, wove spells of brilliant light that enveloped groups of enemy soldiers, sending them reeling into the chaotic void. Brahm's mighty war axe cleaved through the ranks with savage precision, each strike leaving a trail of smoldering ruin in its wake. The combined efforts of these brave souls, from the grizzled veterans to the impassioned youths who had taken up arms in defense of their future, created a tapestry of valor that defied the encroaching shadow. Despite the overwhelming odds, a palpable sense of unity began to emerge. Soldiers who had once fought merely for survival now fought for something greater, a legacy of honor, a hope that the sacrifices of the past would pave the way for a brighter future. In whispered exchanges between clashes of sword and spirit, Kalen and his allies shared memories, dreams, and quiet pledges of loyalty. Each wounded warrior, each scarred survivor became a testament to the unbreakable human spirit, a living reminder that even in the darkest hour, the light of hope can flicker and endure. Amid this maelstrom of valor and despair, a decisive moment began to crystallize. As the tide of battle ebbed and flowed, Kalen felt the medallion around his neck throb with an almost overwhelming intensity. In that instant, he understood that his destiny was not solely to repel the darkness, but to shape it, to forge from the crucible of conflict a new path for those who would carry the flame of hope into the future. With this realization, the very air around him seemed to shimmer with latent magic. The ancient energy within him surged to the fore, mingling with the raw elements of the battlefield. The ground beneath his feet quaked as if acknowledging his awakening, and in that cosmic moment, he raised his sword high. Its blade, aglow with a fierce, unyielding radiance, caught the light of dawn as it broke over the horizon, a symbol of the promise that even the harshest night eventually gives way to a new day. It was then that the climax of their struggle arrived. The Black Herald, having watched Kalen's ascent with a mixture of disdain and grudging respect, lunged forward in one final, all-encompassing assault. Their duel, now the centerpiece of the epic conflict, became a maelstrom of energy and emotion. Sparks flew in dazzling bursts, and the clatter of steel rang out against the backdrop of a universe poised on the edge of rebirth. Every stroke was a testament to Kalen's transformation, from a warrior burdened by his past to a leader tempered by the fires of adversity. With one final, resounding clash that echoed across the shattered remnants of the citadel, Kalen's blade found its mark. The Black Herald staggered, his dark aura fracturing as he fell to his knees, a harbinger of defeated nihilism in a moment that reverberated like the fall of a great star. In the ensuing silence, the battlefield held its breath. The enemy forces, now leaderless and disoriented by the collapse of their central figure, began to falter. A cheer, a raw, unbridled cry of triumph, arose from Kalen's united defenders, echoing off the ancient walls and across the scarred plains. Yet even as victory seemed within their grasp, Kalen's heart pounded with the heavy understanding that this battle, like all battles, demanded its due sacrifice. He knelt briefly on the blood-stained ground, feeling the pulse of the medallion and the weight of every lost life that had led him to this moment. It was a reminder that in the pursuit of greatness, every triumph was tempered by the sorrow of sacrifice, every victory a tribute to the fallen. As the enemy's retreat became evident and the remnants of the Crimson Legion scattered like shadows at dawn, the defenders gathered in solemn clusters. Amid the clamor of wounded voices and the subdued murmur of careworn souls, Kalen rose once more. His eyes, determined yet reflective, swept over the assembled champions of the citadel. With an air of quiet command, he addressed them. Today we have reclaimed not just a fortress, but the very promise of hope. Our struggle has been hard and bitter, and the cost has been dear. Yet let this day be remembered, that even in our darkest hour, the light of our courage and unity shines brighter than the void. A palpable silence descended upon the survivors, a silence laden with both grief and the unyielding spark of renewal. As Callan stood amid the ruin and the resolute expressions of his comrades, he felt the steady thrum of the ancient magic within him, a magic that had been born of pain tempered in fire and forged into a beacon of light. The medallion, glowing softly in the early morning light, seemed a whisper of a future where every scar, every loss was a step towards true mastery of one's destiny. Slowly the survivors began to rebuild. The Crimson Citadel, though battered by the relentless siege, stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the days that followed, wounded warriors were tended to, and makeshift defenses were reinforced against any future onslaught. Callan, now recognized not only as a warrior but as a leader of extraordinary vision, assumed the mantle of responsibility with humility and a fierce determination to honor those who had fallen. He spent long hours in quiet contemplation, reconciling the conflicting emotions of grief and hope, ambition and sacrifice, and pondering the eternal dance of light and darkness that defined the essence of magic itself. In time, the siege became a part of the Citadel's storied history, a chapter written in blood and courage that would be recounted in hushed tones by bards and chroniclers for generations to come. Yet for Callan, the battle was more than a transient victory. It was a defining crucible that shaped his very soul. As he sat by a well-worn stone wall one evening, watching the last embers of twilight fade from the sky, he remembered every moment of the ordeal, the desperate clashing of blades, the unity in the face of overwhelming odds, and the quiet, steadfast moments of introspection that followed in the aftermath. In his heart he vowed that no matter what trials might lie ahead, he would continue to bear the torch of hope, a light fueled not by the lust for power, but by the promise of renewal and the unbreakable bond of shared sacrifice. And so, as the crimson hues of dusk gave way to the cool, resolute blues of a star-sprinkled night, Callan and his companions prepared to take their leave of the besieged citadel. They knew that the war had not ended with the fall of the Black Herald, but that a greater task awaited them, a pilgrimage to reclaim the lost heritage of their people, to honor the ancient covenants of magic, and to ensure that the legacy of valor, unity, and sacrifice would endure in a realm forever haunted by both beauty and sorrow.